Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So we will start with parasympathomimetic drugs. So as you have studied in your neurohumoral transmission of autonomic nervous system, so it involves various steps such as impulse propagation, conduction of impulse, impulse generation, release of neurotransmitter, post-junctional activity, and termination of action. So we will be studying the same thing here in cholinergic transmission also. So in cholinergic transmission, you will be studying about how this neurotransmitter of cholinergic nerves is synthesized, how it is stored, how it is released, how it acts on the adjacent receptors, and how its action is terminated. In cholinergic transmission, you will be studying about the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. So because acetylcholine, it is the neurotransmitter that is released from the nerve endings of the preganglionic neuron and also of the postganglionic neuron. So in a sympathetic nerve or a parasympathetic nerve, we have seen that they consist of ganglia in the middle, and that neurotransmitter which is released at the ganglia in both the cases. It means in the preganglionic nerve ending of a sympathetic nerve or a preganglionic nerve ending of a parasympathetic nerve. In both the cases, the neurotransmitter that is released at the ganglia is acetylcholine, whereas the neurotransmitter that is released at the nerve ending of a postganglionic parasympathetic nerve is acetylcholine, and that which is released at the postganglionic sympathetic nerve ending is noradrenaline. So we'll study about this acetylcholine, how it is synthesized, how it is stored, and how it is released. So generally, acetylcholine, it is synthesized locally in the cholinergic nerve endings, either in the preganglionic parasympathetic or postganglionic parasympathetic or preganglionic sympathetic neurons. So in all the cases, acetylcholine is synthesized locally in the cholinergic nerve. So this is synthesized by this mechanism. So the choline with acetyl coenzyme A in the presence of an enzyme choline acetyl transferase, it gives acetylcholine. So choline and acetyl coenzyme A gives choline acetylcholine, and this acetylcholine, it is stored in the synaptic vesicles. So we'll see this in this diagram. So the acetylcholine that is synthesized in the cholinergic nerve ending, it is stored in the synaptic vesicles. So there is an transporter. So we have studied about these transporters in membrane transport. The transporters will facilitate the movement of solutes across the membrane. A transporter called as sodium choline transporter, which is present on the nerve endings, will transport the acetylcholine. Or we can say choline So this sodium choline transporter will transport the choline into the cholinergic nerve ending, and this choline in the presence of choline acetyl transferase will form acetylcholine, and this acetylcholine is stored in the synaptic vesicles. Whenever a nerve impulse it reaches the cholinergic nerve ending, this leads to fusion of synaptic vesicles with the membrane of axon, and this leads to exocytosis of acetylcholine. And this acetylcholine which is released, it will act on the receptors which are present on the adjacent membrane. So whether it is in the ganglia or whether it is in the organ to which the cholinergic nerves are supplied, they act on the receptors and produce their actions. And once the acetylcholine is released and once it has acted on the receptors, it has to be terminated, or we can say it has to be destroyed. If it is not destroyed, it keeps on continuously acting on the receptors, even though its action is not required. So here, this acetylcholine which is released here, it is hydrolyzed by the enzyme called as acetylcholinesterase. So the enzyme it is called as acetylcholinesterase, and this acetylcholinesterase will cause hydrolysis of acetylcholine once again to choline and acetyl coenzyme. In this way, the released acetylcholine once again will be hydrolyzed, and the choline which is formed here will be taken back into the axonal nerve ending, and it is utilized for the synthesis of new acetylcholine. So here Just a minute, I lost the controls for mute, unmute and all. That is the reason why I am checking here. Okay. So in this way, this choline which is formed here will be reutilized for the synthesis of new acetylcholine. Now let's see what are the receptors on which this released acetylcholine will act. Acetylcholine will act on receptors which are called as cholinergic receptors, or they are also called as cholineceptors. As you have seen, there are various receptors through which drugs produce their action. In the same way, these are the receptors which will produce the neurotransmitter mediated action. And these receptors can be categorized into two. They are muscarinic receptors and nicotinic receptors. So muscarinic receptors generally are the receptors which are stimulated by an alkaloid called as muscarine and are blocked by an alkaloid called as atropine. Based on the receptors, agonist and antagonist, they have categorized these muscarinic receptors and nicotinic receptors. First, let's see about muscarinic receptors. We know that receptors mediate their actions through 4 different transducer mechanisms. They are ligand-gated ion channel type, G-protein coupled receptors, enzyme-linked receptors, and intracellular receptors, or we can say cytosolic receptors. And this muscarinic receptors, they come under G-protein coupled receptors, whereas nicotinic receptors, they come under ligand-gated ion channel type of receptors. Let's see about this muscarinic receptors. As we have seen, muscarinic receptors are G-protein coupled receptors, and these muscarinic receptors are primarily located on the effector cells. So effector cells, in the sense, we have seen there are various organs within the body which function involuntarily, and these organs are under the control of autonomic nervous system. And under the autonomic nervous system, we have cholinergic nervous system and adrenergic nervous system. Now, this cholinergic nerves, which are involved in regulation of this involuntary organs, are supplied with these cholinergic nerves, and they consist of this muscarinic receptors. For example, the heart, blood vessels, eye, smooth muscles, glands of gastrointestinal tract, the respiratory tract, urinary tract, sweat glands, salivary glands, and in central nervous system. All these regions, they consist of muscarinic receptors. And these organs, involuntary organs, they are regulated by this autonomic nerves or cholinergic nerves. And the muscarinic receptors are once again divided into 5 different subtypes based upon the distribution of these receptors and based upon the agonist that acts on that particular receptors. They are categorized into 5 different types. They are M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5. So these are the 5 different subtypes of muscarinic receptors. So cholinergic receptors are of 2 different types, muscarinic receptors and nicotinic receptors. Muscarinic receptors are once again of 5 different subtypes, M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5. And this M1, M2, and M3 receptors are present on the effector cells. And of these, the M1 receptors and few receptors also are present pre-junctionally. So pre-junctionally in the sense, for example, a junction is a place where 2 nerves or nerve and an effector organ comes in close contact with. For example, here this is the nerve ending and this is the effector organ or effector cell. They come in close contact and this is called as an junction. Or if 2 nerves come in close contact with each other, we call it as a synapse. But a nerve and an effector cell, if they come in close contact, so in this region, that receptors which are present on the effector organ are called as post-junctional receptors, and that receptor which is present on the nerve ending itself. So these are called as pre-junctional receptors. So few of these muscarinic M1, M2, and M3 receptors, they are pre-junctional receptors. Whereas M4 and M5 receptors are present mainly on the nerve endings of the brain, and they are involved only in the release of certain neurotransmitters. And the most prominent type of muscarinic receptors are M1, M2, and M3 receptors. Now, let's see about the different types of receptors and where they are present and what are their agonists. So we'll discuss again these things in detail, but briefly you observe these things. So the muscarinic receptors, they are present on all postganglionic parasympathetic nerve endings. They are present on few postganglionic sympathetic nerve endings also. Example, in the sweat glands and some blood vessels, which are supplied with sympathetic nerves, they also will have these muscarinic receptors. But all the postganglionic parasympathetic nerve endings, they act on these muscarinic receptors, which are supplied with those neurons. Whereas nicotinic receptors, as we have seen that there are 5 subtypes of muscarinic receptors, nicotinic receptors also are of 2 different subtypes. They are NN and NM. NN is nicotinic neuronal type of receptor and NM is nicotinic musculotropic type of receptors. Nicotinic musculotropic type of receptors are present on skeletal muscles, whereas NM receptors, they are present in the ganglia of both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves, and also they are present in the adrenal medulla. And in some regions of the central nervous system, such as cerebral cortex, basal ganglia, the muscarinic receptors and nicotinic receptors also are present. Now we will see about these individual receptors. So M1 receptor, it is also called as neuronal receptor. So because these receptors are present in the ganglia and also they are present in the central neurons. So in the ganglia and also in the central neurons, these are present. Hence, these are also called as neuronal receptors. And they are also present in the gastrointestinal tract, and they mediate gastric secretions because they are present in this gastrointestinal tract in the gastric glands and also on the smooth muscles of sphincters. Hence, M1 receptors, when they are stimulated, receptors here are always stimulated by acetylcholine or any agonist which acts on them. And this stimulation of that particular receptors in gastric glands will enhance gastric secretion, and stimulation of smooth muscles in the sphincters. So it causes relaxation of sphincter. And in the central nervous system, we have seen that M1 receptors are also present, and they are present in the cerebral cortex, hippocampus, corpus striatum, basal ganglia, and all, where they are involved in regulating the learning, memory, and motor functions. So we should remember where these M1 receptors are present, what are the actions that are mediated when these M1 receptors are stimulated. When coming to this M2 receptors, these are called as cardiac receptors. So cardiac receptors because they are predominantly present on the heart. And generally, whenever the M2 receptors present on the heart are stimulated, it leads to a reduction in heart rate. And some M2 receptors are also present prejunctionally. So as we have seen previously, some are also present prejunctionally, whereas M3 receptors are the receptors which are present on the visceral smooth muscles and also in all the glands. So visceral smooth muscles and in the glands, and they are also present on blood vessels in the vascular endothelium, and we will see how stimulation of these receptors mediate various actions. So in this, you can see the distribution of the receptors. So M1 receptors are present in the autonomic ganglia. Stimulation of M1 receptors, it leads to depolarization or initiation of an excitatory postsynaptic potential. So we have seen that ganglia, the neurotransmitter released here is acetylcholine. Acetylcholine will act on N receptors and also on M1 receptors which are present in the ganglia, and it stimulates the postganglionic neuron so that it initiates an impulse, and the impulse is transmitted. M1 receptors are also present on gastric glands, which leads to histamine release and increase in acid secretion. And we have seen on the central nervous system, it is involved in regulating the learning, memory, and motor functions. Whereas M2 receptors are cardiac receptors. They are present on SA node, AV node, atrium, and ventricles. And some M2 receptors are also present prejunctionally. So these are called as autoreceptors. So prejunctional receptors, which we have seen, they are called as autoreceptors. So stimulation of a prejunctional receptor will lead to inhibition of neurotransmitter release. And as we have seen, acetylcholine, when it acts on heart, it reduces heart rate. So this is because we will see later in detail. It acts on SA node and decreases impulse generation. It acts on AV node and decreases impulse conduction. It acts on atrium and reduces this contraction. Whereas M3 receptors are present on all the visceral smooth muscles of the visceral organs. So smooth muscles of stomach, smooth muscles of pancreatic duct or bile duct or intestines or uterus or urinary bladder. In all the cases, the smooth muscles of these visceral organs, they consist of M3 receptors. Stimulation of these M3 receptors on the smooth muscles of these organs, it causes contraction. M3 receptors are also present on the iris. M3 receptors are present on the ciliary muscle and all the exocrine glands and on vascular endothelium. So all these are G protein coupled receptor, and we know that G proteins coupled receptors exert their actions through three different transducer mechanisms, of which one is adenyl cyclase cyclic AMP pathway, IP3-DAG pathway, and direct action through various ion channels. So M1 receptors, they act through IP3-DAG pathway, and M3 receptors also act through IP3-DAG pathway. Whereas M2 receptors, they are linked with an ion channel, that is potassium ion channel. Whereas nicotinic receptors, we have seen that they are of two different types. They are NM receptors and NN receptors. NM receptors are called as nicotinic musculotropic receptors because they are present in the skeletal muscles, and stimulation of this NN receptors, it leads to contraction of skeletal muscles. Those skeletal muscles are not involuntary in nature. Skeletal muscles are under the influence of somatic nerves. So somatic nerves are involved in regulating the functions of skeletal muscle, that is contraction or relaxation. And the neurotransmitter that is released from the nerve ending of somatic nerves is also acetylcholine, and acetylcholine acts on the NM receptors on skeletal muscles and it causes contraction of skeletal muscle. Whereas NN receptors are called as neuronal receptors because they are present mainly in the ganglia and in the case of adrenal medullary cells or in the spinal cord and in certain regions of brain. So this is the distribution of NM receptors and NN receptors. So NM receptors, they are present in skeletal muscle. NN neuronal receptors, they are present in the autonomic ganglia, adrenal medulla, and central nervous system. So in autonomic ganglia, they cause depolarization, transmission of impulse, whereas in adrenal medulla, it causes release of catecholamine, and it has some site-specific excitation and inhibition in the case of central nervous system. We will see about them in detail when we are studying about the drugs which act on NM receptors and NN receptors. So here it shows the transducer mechanisms. So we have seen all the nicotinic receptors are gated with an ion channel. The NM receptors are gated with sodium and potassium ion channels, whereas NN receptors are gated with sodium, potassium, and calcium channels. Now let's see about the drugs which act on these receptors. Generally, the drugs which stimulate the receptors, all these receptors which we have discussed, they are called as mimetic, or we call them as agonists, because they have affinity and also intrinsic activity. Whereas those drugs which block these receptors, they are called as antagonists. And all the drugs which produce actions similar to that of acetylcholine, because we have seen acetylcholine, it is a neurotransmitter which acts on this NM receptors, NN receptors, muscarinic receptors and all. And acetylcholine is the agonist. In the same way, there are many drugs which produce the same agonistic activity on this receptors. And such drugs are called as parasympathomimetic drugs because they mimic the actions of parasympathetic nerve stimulation. Hence, they are called as parasympathomimetic drugs. And there are certain drugs which block these receptors. They are called as parasympatholytic drugs because they break the actions of parasympathetic nerve stimulation. Now, let us see about this parasympathomimetic drugs. So, parasympathomimetic drugs produce actions similar to that of acetylcholine, and this they can exert this action in two ways. One, by directly interacting with the cholinergic receptors, means it goes and binds to the cholinergic receptors. And the other thing is by increasing the availability of acetylcholine. Such drugs are anticholinesterases. So because we have seen acetylcholine, after it is released, it goes and acts on the receptors present on the adjacent membrane. Once it has produced its action, it has to be terminated or hydrolyzed. And this hydrolysis, it is mediated by an enzyme called as acetylcholine transferase, or we can call it as what we can say cholinesterase. It is an enzyme which causes hydrolysis of this acetylcholine. And if we give any drug which prevents this hydrolysis or which blocks this particular enzyme, then hydrolysis of acetylcholine does not occur. Once the hydrolysis does not occur, acetylcholine will not be degraded, so that the acetylcholine levels will be maintained and they act on the receptors. So these are the two categories of drug. First category is cholinergic agonists, which directly act on the receptors, and the other thing is anticholinesterases, which prevent the degradation of acetylcholine. Any doubt till here?
No doubt, sir.
No, sir.
So I want you to take a break for 15 minutes and join by 11 o'clock so that I can finish posting your attendance by 11:05. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
So now we will see about this cholinergic agonists. As we have seen, parasympathomimetic drugs are of two different types. One directly acting on the receptors, and the other they increase the availability of acetylcholine by preventing its hydrolysis. So before going into this parasympathomimetic drugs, either cholinergic agonists or anticholinesterases, let's see what are the actions of acetylcholine. So we have seen acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that is released from the nerve endings and acts on this muscarinic and nicotinic receptors. Let's see what are its actions on muscarinic receptors. We have seen that muscarinic receptors of M2 subtype, they are present in the heart. And this acetylcholine, it causes hyperpolarization of the SA node. As we know that SA node is the pacemaker cell of the heart, and it is involved in generation of impulses which facilitates the working of heart. And hyperpolarization of this SA nodal cells will reduce the rate of depolarization. So automatically the number of impulses that are generated by the SA node will be reduced, which leads to formation of bradycardia. So bradycardia is nothing but decreased heart rate. And this also might lead to cardiac arrest because the number of impulses it will be very reduced, and depolarization is also abolished because of hyperpolarization. So you should know the difference between depolarization and hyperpolarization. Depolarization is nothing but it is stimulation of that particular cell in which the membrane potential will rise from minus 90 millivolt to plus 30 millivolt. So that is the depolarization. Whereas in the case of hyperpolarization, the membrane potential will go below minus 90 millivolt. So this prevents the stimulation. This automatically leads to bradycardia or even cardiac arrest. Whereas AV node and Purkinje fibers, generally these are involved in conduction of impulses. And here the refractory period in AV node and Purkinje fibers will be increased. So this automatically reduces the rate of transmission of impulse through this AV node and Purkinje fibers. So this automatically reduces the number of impulses that are transmitted to the ventricles. So this leads to reduction or slowing of conduction. Whereas this also reduces the contraction of atria and ventricles because it affects the refractory period of atrial fibers and also ventricular fibers. And this causes atrial fibrillation or flutter, which is nothing but excessive contractions of atria or atrial fibrillation. So all these things are the actions of acetylcholine on M2 receptors which are present on the heart. Whereas we have seen that blood vessels also consist of receptors, but they are of M3 type of receptors. We should remember that blood vessels are not supplied with cholinergic nerves. Understood? Blood vessels are not supplied with cholinergic nerves, but blood vessels consist of muscarinic receptors, M3 receptors. Whereas the circulating acetylcholine will act on this M3 receptors and they are involved in dilation of blood vessels. So M3 receptors are present on the vascular endothelial cells in the blood vessels, and especially in the skin of face, in the neck, and also in salivary glands, where stimulation of these M3 receptors, it causes vasodilation. And vasodilation leads to fall in blood pressure and also flushing of blood to the regions where blood vessels are dilated. And this vasodilation, it is mediated by the release of a chemical called as EDRF, that is endothelium dependent relaxing factor, which is nothing but nitric oxide. It means when M3 receptors are stimulated by acetylcholine, nitric oxide is released, and this nitric oxide causes vasodilation. The blood vessels of penis also are dilated by this acetylcholine by acting on M3 receptors, and this is necessary for erection of penis. Whereas we have seen all the smooth muscles. Smooth muscles are present in the organs which are under involuntary control. Stomach, intestine, liver, pancreatic ducts, or uterus or urinary bladder, blood vessels, all these organs which are under involuntary control, they have smooth muscles, and smooth muscles have M3 receptors. Whenever acetylcholine acts on this smooth muscle present in these organs, it causes contraction. For example, in gastrointestinal tract, it increases the tone of smooth muscle. It means it causes contraction of smooth muscle, and also it facilitates peristalsis of the gastrointestinal tract. And this also causes relaxation of sphincters. So sphincters are the doors which allow the movement of substances from one part of intestine to the other part of intestine, or any opening of any organ which is under involuntary control. So this is nothing but it consists of more amount of smooth muscle. That sphincters will be relaxed by the action of acetylcholine on the M3 receptors which are present on those sphincters. So it means smooth muscle will be contracted and sphincters will be relaxed. So in the ureters, smooth muscle also peristalsis is increased, and also dextrosor smooth muscle in the urinary bladder, it will be contracted. The sphincters which regulate urinary bladder also will be relaxed. So this leads to emptying of urinary bladder. And all the smooth muscles that are present in the respiratory tract also will be constricted. So you should remember that acetylcholine will cause constriction of all the smooth muscles, whereas it will be very essential in the case of asthmatics who are highly sensitive to this acetylcholine mediated bronchoconstriction, which leads to dyspnea or absence of breathing, and also precipitation of bronchial asthma. In the secretory glands, so all the exocrine glands, they consist of M3 receptors mostly, and in some cases they consist of M2 receptors. M3 receptor stimulation on this glandular epithelium will enhance the secretions. So it enhances the secretions of sweat by stimulating sweat glands, enhances the secretions of saliva, enhances the secretions of respiratory tract, trachea, bronchi, enhances the secretions of gastric secretions. So acetylcholine will enhance all the secretions. In eye, we have seen M3 receptors are present. In the eye, M3 receptors are present on the circular muscles of iris. So we have seen that iris consists of circular muscles and radial muscles. So circular muscles, they consist of M3 receptors. So radial muscles, they consist of adrenergic receptors. So stimulation of M3 receptors in the circular muscles, it causes contraction of circular muscles leading to meiosis. So So meiosis is nothing but it is reduction in size of pupil, which occurs due to contraction of subcutaneous. In the same way, the ciliary muscle which suspends the lens behind this iris. Also, it consists of M3 receptors, and stimulation of M3 receptors will lead to contraction of ciliary muscle and spasm of accommodation, because when ciliary muscle is contracted, the lens could not be able to adjust for near and far vision. So this is called as spasm of accommodation, and there also occurs increased outflow of aqueous humor because of contraction of this ciliary muscle. So these are the reasons for which acetylcholine is also useful in glaucoma patients, because it causes enhanced outflow of aqueous humor. And glaucoma, it is a condition in which there is an increased intraocular pressure because of excessive secretion of aqueous humor by this ciliary epithelium. So those are the muscarinic actions of acetylcholine on various muscarinic receptors. And coming to this nicotinic actions of acetylcholine on nicotinic receptors, we have seen nicotinic receptors are of two different types. They are NN receptors and NM receptors. So NN receptors are present mostly on the autonomic ganglia and in central nervous system. Acetylcholine acts on the NN receptors, which are present on both sympathetic and parasympathetic ganglia, and it stimulates the postganglionic neuron. Postganglionic nerves are stimulated, whereas acetylcholine acts on NM receptors, which are present on the skeletal muscle, and this leads to contraction of skeletal muscles. And we should note one thing, that we have seen that there are two different types of drugs under parasympathomimetic drugs. So one is cholinomimetic alkaloids, and the other are anticholinesterases. Under cholinomimetic alkaloids, cholinesters are the drugs which are not acting on this nicotinic receptors. We will see about them in detail. We have seen that cholinomimetic drugs, or we can say cholinergic agonists or cholinomimetic drugs, they are of two different types. They are choline esters and cholinomimetic alkaloids. So you can see here, cholinergic agonists are of two different types. They are choline esters and alkaloids. And just now we have seen that choline esters do not have any action on nicotinic receptors, whereas choline esters, they act on muscarinic receptors. So choline esters are nothing but they are esters of choline. They are either acetylcholine, methacholine, carbachol, and methanol. These are esters of choline, whereas cholinomimetic alkaloids are the alkaloids which are obtained from various natural sources. Examples are muscarin, pilocarpine, and aricoline. These are the cholinomimetic alkaloids. Now, let's see about cholinomimetic alkaloids. So in previous case, we have seen cholinesters. Under cholinesters, we have seen the actions of acetylcholine, and we are having methacholine, carbachol, and methanol. So generally, the cholinergic drugs, they do not have any specific advantage unless they are selective, because all the actions which are mediated through acetylcholine, they are adverse in nature. It means we have seen that on the heart, it increases heart rate. On smooth muscle, it increases the contraction of smooth muscle. On the glands, it increases secretions of the glands. So all these are unwanted effects. Hence, cholinergic agonists are used very less in the treatment of any condition. Whereas cholinomimetic alkaloids, which are having some prominent selective actions, they are used in treatment of various diseases. So, for example, cholinomimetic alkaloids are of three different types. They are pilocarpine, muscarine, and aricoline. Of which pilocarpine, it is obtained from the leaves of Pilocarpus microphyllus. From the leaves of this plant, pilocarpine alkaloid is obtained, and it acts mostly on M3 receptors, but it can also act on M1 receptors. So whenever we are discussing about these receptors, immediately we should recollect where these receptors are present. So M1 receptors, we have seen that they are present in the autonomic ganglia, they are present on the central nervous system, they are present on the gastric glands. M3 receptors, they are present on the smooth muscles, they are present on the exocrine glands, they are present in the eye. And when it acts on these receptors, automatically all the actions which are mediated through those receptors in that respective organs will be occurring. So pilocarpine, it acts on this M3 receptors, increases secretions. In eye, it causes meiosis. On ciliary muscle, it causes contraction. In eye, it causes decrease in intraocular tension because it enhances the outflow of aqueous humor. Hence, this is used in the treatment of open angle glaucoma. So this is a kind of glaucoma. So glaucoma generally, majorly it is of two different types. So one is open angle glaucoma and the other is angle closure glaucoma. And here, this pilocarpine, it is used as a third line drug in the treatment of glaucoma, open angle glaucoma. So generally pilocarpine, it is also used as miotic because it induces meiosis by constriction or contraction of circular muscles of iris. Whereas the other alkaloid is muscarine. So muscarine, it is obtained from mushrooms such as Amanita muscaria and Inocybe species are different types of mushrooms from which muscarine is obtained. And this muscarine, it is obtained from different types of mushrooms of which Inocybe species, they produce muscarinic actions. Whereas other types of chemicals which are obtained from mushrooms are hallucinogenic type and phalloidin type, which are not related to this cholinergic actions. Only Inocybe species will release or give this alkaloid muscarine, which produces muscarinic actions. Muscarinic actions in the sense, all the actions which we have discussed on different receptors will be produced by this muscarine. And this can be antagonized by atropine because atropine, it is an antagonist to that muscarinic receptors. So that atropine will go and bind to the muscarinic receptors so that this agonist cannot act on those receptors and it won't be able to produce its action. So aricoline is another cholinomimetic alkaloid which is obtained from the betel nut Areca catechu. So it is betel nut and has both muscarinic and nicotinic actions. So this is regarding cholinomimetic alkaloids. So these are one class of drugs, cholinomimetic drugs, which act directly on muscarinic receptors. So you should differentiate between cholinergic or parasympathomimetic drugs. So one is cholinergic agonist and the other is anticholinesterases. So this group of drugs, they directly act on the cholinergic receptors, whereas anticholinesterases, they increase the activity of acetylcholine by preventing its hydrolysis. So these are the two different classes of drugs we have discussed about cholinergic agonists. Under cholinergic agonists, we have seen the pharmacological actions of acetylcholine. Whereas under alkaloids, we have seen how muscarine is obtained, how pilocarpine is obtained, and how aricholine is obtained. We should remember only one thing, that cholinergic drugs, especially parasympathomimetic drugs, are having few therapeutic activity because all the actions which are mediated by acetylcholine are adverse in nature. Only to counteract or to produce normality, these drugs can be administered. So next we will see about the other class of drugs. They are anticholinesterases. So previously we have seen cholinergic agonists. Now we will see other class of drugs, anticholinesterases. So anticholinesterases are nothing but these are the drugs which block or inhibit the action of the enzyme called as acetylcholinesterase. So every individual, they have this enzyme called as acetylcholinesterase, and this acetylcholinesterase will cause hydrolysis or breakdown of acetylcholine to form choline and acetyl coenzyme or acetate. And this choline is once again taken back into the nerve ending and it is utilized for the synthesis of new neurotransmitter acetylcholine. And this anticholinesterases will block the action of acetylcholinesterase. So automatically acetylcholine will not be degraded so that it can act on the adjacent receptors for a long time. So this anticholinesterases will inhibit the enzyme cholinesterase and protect acetylcholine from hydrolysis, and this acetylcholine will produce the cholinergic effects in vivo. And this anticholinesterases are of two different types. They are either the esters of carbomic acid or they are derivatives of phosphoric acid. And esters of carbomic acid, they are called as carbamates, and which are derivatives of phosphoric acid, they are called as organophosphates. So you can see that there are two different types of anticholinesterases, which are either esters of carbomic acid or which are derivatives of phosphoric acid. And here you can see in this structure, carbamates, they have a tertiary amino group, they have a quaternary ammonium group, and carbamates generally they are lipid insoluble, whereas organophosphates they are lipid soluble. When coming to this classification of drugs, it is very essential for all of us to remember that in pharmacology we should be very thorough with the classification of drugs which are used in treatment of various disorders or in various conditions. So in the previous case, we have seen cholinergic agonists. Under cholinergic agonists, we have seen cholinesters and cholinomimetic alkaloids. So that is the classification of cholinergic agonists. So when coming to this classification of anticholinesterases, we can classify them into two different types. They are either reversible anticholinesterases or irreversible anticholinesterases. So reversible anticholinesterases and irreversible anticholinesterases. And the reversible anticholinesterases can once again be categorized into carbamates and acridins. and we have seen carbamates are nothing but their derivatives or the esters of carbamic acid. So the basic functional nucleus, or we can say the group, is carbamic acid, and changes in the side chains R1, R2, and R3 position gives different types of carbamates. Examples of carbamates are physostigmine, neostigmine, pyridostigmine, hydrophonium, rivastigmine, donazepam, and galantamine. So these are the examples of carbamates, and under acridins we have tacrin. So the difference between reversible and irreversible anticholinesterases are, we have seen all these drugs, they inhibit the enzyme cholinesterase. Acetylcholinesterase is inhibited by these drugs. And under the mechanism of action through enzymes, we have seen that enzyme activity can be inhibited. So there is competitive inhibition and there is non-competitive inhibition. So in competitive inhibition, what we have seen is generally the reaction of any drugs with that of an enzyme, it occurs, or we can say it binds with hydrogen bonds or weak van der Waals forces. So in such cases, such type of binding is reversible binding. Whereas if this binding between the drug and the enzyme, it occurs with covalent bonds, then we can say that they are irreversibly bound. And these drugs which are categorized under reversible anticholinesterases, they bind with the enzyme cholinesterase through hydrogen bonds or weak van der Waals forces, whereas those drugs which bind with cholinesterase with covalent bonds, they are categorized as irreversible anticholinesterases. Under irreversible anticholinesterases, we have organophosphates and we have carbamates. Under organophosphates, we have diflos, ecothiopate, parathione, malathione, iazinon, and all. Whereas under carbamates, we have carbaryl and propaxone. So generally, organophosphates, here we commonly use them as pesticides. Pesticides in the treatment of what we can say in protection of crops from pests. So these pesticides, parathione, malathione, diflos, all these are pesticides. And carbamates such as carbaryl and propaxone. So these are also insecticides. So we can see they are either insecticides or various nerve gases which are used in chemical warfare. So this is regarding the anticholinesterases. Now we will see how this anticholinesterases produce their action. It means how they bind with the enzyme acetylcholinesterase and how they produce they inhibit the degradation of acetylcholine. So for which initially you should know how acetylcholine, it is hydrolyzed by this acetylcholinesterase enzyme. So here you imagine this, it is a folding of an acetylcholine, and this is the acetylcholinesterase enzyme. So the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, it reacts with acetylcholine. So this is the enzyme acetylcholinesterase, and this is the acetylcholine. So generally, we have seen acetylcholine will be hydrolyzed by this enzyme acetylcholinesterase. Acetylcholinesterase has two binding sites for acetylcholine. The one it is called as esteretic site, and the other it is called as anionic site. So these are the two different binding sites with which acetylcholine will bind with that of acetylcholinesterase enzyme. So here you can see acetylcholine, it is bound with this two binding sites. So the active region of acetylcholinesterase contains an aromatic anionic site and an esteretic site, so which is formed with 3 amino acids. We know that an enzyme is nothing but it is a protein. And this protein, it consists of many amino acids. And here, this esteretic site of acetylcholinesterase enzyme, it consists of 3 amino acids. They are serine, glutamate, and histidine are the 3 amino acids. Generally, acetylcholine consists of quaternary nitrogen group. And this quaternary nitrogen group is attracted to that of the aromatic anionic binding site. So here you can see the aromatic anionic binding site, it attracts the quaternary ammonium group. So anionic generally it is negative in nature. Quaternary ammonium group, it is positive in nature, so that there occurs attraction of this thing. And the nucleophilic attack by the serine hydroxyl group at the carboxylic end. So once this binding occurs, there occurs activation of serine amino acid by the adjacent histidine. This leads to acetylation of that particular acetylcholine, and the acetylated enzyme. This is the acetylated enzyme. So this reacts with water immediately. The acetylated enzyme will react with water and it produces acetic acid. It means acetylcholine, it is hydrolyzed. So hydrolyzed to choline and acetate. So this choline which is formed here, once again it is replaced for the synthesis of new acetylcholine, and acetate also it is utilized for the synthesis. So this is the normal mechanism which is involved in hydrolysis of acetylcholine by the enzyme acetylcholinesterase. So let's see once again. So here this A, B, C, and D are the steps which are involved in the hydrolysis of acetylcholine, and this is the holding of an cholinesterase enzyme. And acetylcholine will bind with 2 binding sites of this cholinesterase enzyme. So one is the anionic binding site and the other is esteretic binding site. The hydroxylic group will bind with the esteretic site, and the quaternary ammonium group will bind with the anionic site. So as soon as they bound, the activation of serine by the adjacent histidine, it leads to the acetylation of that particular enzyme, and this acetylated enzyme. So this is the enzyme, and this gets an acetate group from the acetylcholine, and this acetylated enzyme, it reacts with water to form acetic acid. So that choline, it is liberated, acetate is formed, and this choline and acetate, they are used for synthesis of new acetylcholine enzyme. And the drugs which we are about to discuss are anti-cholinesterases. It means these drugs will go and bind to this cholinesterase enzyme, and they prevent the binding of acetylcholine. In the same way how an antagonist will go and block a receptor and prevent the binding of agonist, in the same way anti-cholinesterases come and bind to this enzyme cholinesterase so that acetylcholine cannot be bound to this thing, so that acetylcholine cannot be hydrolyzed. So in the next class, we will see about the mechanisms in which the two different types of anticholinesterases act and inhibit these enzymes anticholinesterase. The enzyme cholinesterase that are how carbamates will inhibit this cholinesterase enzyme and how organophosphates will inhibit cholinesterase.